Causes of the American Revolution. Overall question. Were the colonists justified in waging war and breaking away from Britain? Thesis. The Americans tried to gain freedom peacefully by sending countless documents and letters to the British Parliament, but they ignored every request and continued their tyranny. I believe that because of the peaceful way America attempted to become free countless times but were ignored, they were justified in beginning a war and breaking away from Britain. The French and Indian War. The French and Indian War ended with the Treaty of Paris, and the Proclamation of 1763 was signed soon after. This did not allow colonists to move west of the Appalachian Mountain. It also left Britain in a $31 million debt. British imposed taxes on the colonists such as the Sugar Act, Stamp Act, Currency Act, and the Townshend Acts in order to pay off their war debt. The British felt it was the colonies' fault that they were in debt to begin with because the French and Indian War was, in their eyes, fought to protect and help the colonists. Why were the colonists mad? The Sugar Act of 1764. This act was forced onto the colonists and resulted in a complete invasion of privacy and property thanks to the writs of assistance. The writs of assistance allowed the British to search anywhere they pleased. This infuriated the colonists, merchants, and traders. The Stamp Act of 1765. Again, this act was used to force taxes onto the colonists without any representation or consent. This act was a big turning point because it was the first act that sole purpose was to raise a revenue rather than regulate trade. The Stamp Act Congress called for a peaceful boycott of all British goods because the British had no right to tax the colonies without their consent. No taxation without representation was a famous quote by James Otis. The Virginia House of Burgesses passed a law called the Virginia Resolves that blocked the sale of British goods in Virginia, since the British Parliament felt that they had the right to tax Virginians, but the House of Burgesses disagreed. Unsuccessful attempts at peace. Many boycotts against British goods occurred, but none of them brought anything positive for the colonists. In fact, most of them were ignored. Refrained from trading with the British. The colonies supported American goods rather than imported British goods. One major boycott was the Boston Tea Party, which involved the Sons of Liberty dumping 342 crates of tea into the Boston harbor. The Boston Tea Party resulted in Britain becoming outraged and enforcing another new set of acts called the Intolerable Acts. The Intolerable Acts closed trade routes for Massachusetts, abolished town meetings, and allowed British soldiers to live in colonist houses. All of these were considered by the colonists to be a complete invasion of rights. Unsuccessful petitions. The petition to the king was written by the First Continental Congress. In this document, they addressed the colonists' grievances and what was wrong with the British rule. They also explained how the British had no right to tax the colonists since no one is representing them in Parliament. The Olive Branch Petition was a petition written by the Second Continental Congress and John Dickinson. This petition stated that the colonists would gladly remain under the British rule if they were to stop enacting unjust taxes on them. The British declined. This was one of the many documents colonists wrote in an attempt to make peace. Influencers of fighting. The Declaration of Independence states, "In every stage of oppressions we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered by repeated injury." Similarly, the Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms says, What is to defend us against so enormous, so unlimited a power? We are reduced to the alternative of choosing an unconditional submission to the tyranny of the British officials or resistance by force." Both of these documents state that no matter how peaceful the colonists were, they never got any closer to their freedom, or at least a retraction of the taxes. Because of this, they believed that they had no choice but to fight for their freedom using violence.
Are you doing okay?
Conclusion. The colonists attempted to maintain peace and strong ties with Britain countless times, in numerous petitions but constantly failed. They led boycotts such as the Boston Tea Party, which only resulted in more acts. In this case, the Intolerable Acts, which made Britain's hold on the colonies even tighter. The colonists began with peace, but years later realized the only way to free themselves of unjust taxes and an oppressive government was by fighting the violence. For these reasons, I believe that the colonists were justified in waging war and breaking away from the tyranny that was the British Empire.